G'day YouTube, here we have part 3 of What is Fascism? Crash course for Trumpletons.
Of early 20th century Europe that depended upon the political conflicts and the peculiar idea world of Europe at that time, and different cultural eras after that point really didn't provide the means for the recreation of these same kinds of ideas, so that fascism as a specific form is pretty much a one-off in terms of European culture of the first half of the 20th century.
So can we use the term fascism to understand anything that's going on in the world today? Is it still a useful concept?
Frankly, I think it's completely useless. I think it's a side issue. It's a distraction from what the real issues are. If we start arguing endlessly about, is this or that politician fascist or not, it's maybe a useful term of abuse, but it's being spread so widely and so generally now that it's not even very good as a term of abuse. I think we need to ask a different question, which is, how do we defend democracy? What are the threats to democracy? How can we overcome them? Are some politicians seeking to undermine the institutions of parliamentary democracy, free speech, free press, free discussion, the rule of law, and all of these things? We need to turn the question around and not say, is fascism on the march, but is democracy in danger?
And what do you think?
Well, I think it is. I think we're living in dark and difficult times. I think if you look at Eastern Europe in particular, you can see serious threats to democracy already partially realized in Poland and Hungary. You can look at Turkey, regime there, which is having a mass purge of civil institutions of people it doesn't like, in the universities, the press. You can see an attempt in Poland, the government to control the courts. You can see all kinds of threats and dangers in those countries. I think there's a new atmosphere in the UK when the government, having claimed that the people are reclaiming sovereignty from the European Union, has tried repeatedly to prevent Parliament from taking the crucial decisions on how we leave the EU. Fortunately, the courts have stood up against it. I think in America, Donald Trump is operating in a way that I think does constitute a real threat to American democracy and American institutions and the American Constitution. So I think we're living in difficult times and we need to be vigilant. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance, as someone once said.
Richard Evans, one of 3 eminent historians you heard on Rear Vision. The others were Robert Paxton and Stanley Payne. And if you've just listened to the program as a podcast, please rate us or leave a comment where you find.
Okay, there you go. Rear Vision. What is Fascism? Crash course for Trumpletons. As it happens, I more or less set up so that I could record that. I remembered that it was going to be on right up until I started answering a comment on the thread, replying to somebody who claimed that I was overreaching wildly in stating that Donald Trump has been pretty much following Hitler's playbook in terms of how to get oneself elected by harnessing the herd instinct of populism. And just as they said on, I don't know, part 1 or part 2 of the Rear Vision broadcast, the particular YouTube channel user who was taking me to task was saying, oh, I suppose you expect that Donald Trump's going to burn the White House and blame the Muslims. And the answer is no, I don't expect Donald Trump to burn the White House and blame the Muslims. I expect him to, quote, crack down, unquote, on all forms of protest, dissent, and expression of anti-government sentiment. Last night I was watching a movie review by History Buff channel, History Buffs, perhaps. Anyway, this fella does very well put together in-depth, half an hour to an hour long videos about the accuracy of various Hollywood movies. And he took on Dances with Wolves. And I was really, really, really impressed to find that kind of the second half of the video was not so much based on talking about what happened in the movie and what inaccuracies there were, because he'd covered all that. The second half of the 54-minute documentary was bringing the viewer up to date with what has happened to the characters who were there at the end of the video of the movie and what's happened with their descendants. And it, of course, came by the end of it up to the American police and National Guard showing up wearing flak jackets and battle hats and throwing stun grenades and almost blowing the arm off a young protester against there's a South Dakota access oil pipeline that's been a long, lingering shit fight in the excited states. And when you listen to what the eminent historians and sociologists have to say about fascism and what it consists of, the drift towards militarization of the police, the binary perspective of the world, like really, George W. Bush kicked it off when he said, you're either with us or you're against us. If you're not standing here behind me cheering, then you must be one of the enemies, was what he was implying. It's a simplification of the world that has been tried in the past, and it's never actually worked. It's an appeal to recapture a long lost, glorious, legendary past wherein the ancestors who begat us used to live in a better world. Well, they lived in a better world because their world had been harvested less, it had been hunted less, it had been gathered less, it had been fished less, it had been dug less, it had been mined less, it had been felled less, logged less, sawmilled less. It had been polluted less. They had a better world to live in because the world was better back then. And, I can't see that Tronald Dump attempting to take America back to 1965 is going to be any more successful than Mussolini was. Benito Mussolini, El Duce, than he was when he decided to recapture the glories of the Roman Empire by conquering Ethiopia. And he humiliated himself on the world stage. And then he got involved in World War II just towards the end of the Battle of Britain when he thought that Germany was likely to win. He committed his biplanes with fixed undercarriages to try and raid Great Britain, which had Hurricanes and Spitfires and radar alerted fighter defences. The Italians had a bit of success initially against the British Empire in the Western Desert, but then there was a joke when I was a kid at school that the difference between an Australian Army battle tank and an Italian Army battle tank was the Australian tank had 5 gears for going forward and 1 gear for going backwards. The Italian tank had 5 gears for going backwards and 1 gear for going forwards because the Italians were surrendering by the tens of thousands to individual platoons of less than 24 Australians. Italy didn't do well out of the Second World War. That's what they said, in the radio analysis documentary critique of what is fascism and what is modern fascism. America hasn't done well out of its imperial phase. When they decided they were going to conquer and occupy Afghanistan and conquer and occupy Iraq and dictate ground truths all over the Middle East. It hasn't gone well. They've killed a few quote dictators, quote terrorists, quote tyrants, all of whom used to be American allies. America hasn't killed the Ayatollah Khomeini, but they have killed Saddam Hussein. He was an ally of America. He fought a war for the Americans against the Ayatollah Khomeini. when the Shah of Iran vacated the country for some silly bloody reason, and the Ayatollah Khomeini showed up and took over. All of a sudden, Iraq thought that their traditional enemies were going to be disorganized during the transition, so Iraq attacked Iran. I can remember in about, must have been 1984, visiting a friend, listening to the ABC radio news at 10 o'clock at night, and there was an announcement that there'd been an offensive in the desert war going on between Iraq and Iran. And the Iraqis were claiming an absolute victory because they lost only 60,000 troops killed, wounded, or missing. And they captured an area approximately the size of a tennis court. And the Iranians were claiming that they'd had a great victory because they'd successfully defended the tennis court and they'd only lost 40,000. So 100,000 people had been killed, wounded, or injured, missing in an argument over a bit of dirt just barely big enough to play tennis on. That was kind of how loyal Sad Man Who's Insane was to the Americans, and suddenly they decided that, they needed somewhere to fire off the NATO anti-Soviet stockpile, and he was elected the dummy. Yeah, so Donald Trump, Tronald Dump, the maladministration. Anybody who says that he's not operating along fascist lines is not paying attention. Anybody who says that whomsoever invokes a comparison with Hitler or a fascist or a Nazi regime automatically loses the argument because of Godwin's law. Well, what can I say to you? Godwin was a British apologist for fascism. He wanted to set a scene wherein it's not possible intellectually in polite circles for the last 50 years to speak about anybody whose political ideals at all resemble, say, those of Oswald Mosley in 1938, when Nazism and fascism were an accepted part of the British political landscape. You're not allowed these days to say, oh, so-and-so is a neo-Nazi because, they think that anybody who disagrees with them politically and anybody who is not of their particular personal racial mixture and background deserves to be either suppressed or killed or put in jail. You can't call them a fascist because they say that they're a patriot. That's what Tronald Dump is working on. He says he's a patriot because he says he's protecting the American flag and the American Constitution. And everybody who's been going to kindergarten or any higher form of education in the excited states of Norte Americano since 1955 has started every school day from age 5 to 15 by standing up, putting their hand on their heart, swearing to defend the flag and its constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So when Tronald Dump declares that the free press is an enemy of the state, yep, you're in a sort of big brother crony capitalist 1984 dystopian shit, oh dear, how bad can it get fantasies. And I would say go and have a bit of a read of Robert E. Heinlein's projected future. And he said that there was going to be a 50 to 80 year interregnum wherein America was going to be in a right-wing Christian theocratic dictatorship. That's what he said. And you can't think of any greater, more tub-thumping, flag-waving patriot than Robert Heinlein. But that's what he reckoned. America was going to go down into a theocracy, a dictatorship based on God bothering. Rule Britannia, 5 Chinese crackers up your arsehole, bang, 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 bang. And China has 5,000 miles of underground railway tunnels that are not in commercial or civilian use. If they have as many missiles per mile of underground railway tunnel, it means they've got 5,000 rail-launched intercontinental ballistic missiles, nuclear tipped, that the Americans haven't been paying attention to. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.